From Interfaith Alliance, this is State of Belief Radio. I'm your host, Reverend Welton Gaddy. What a week of fast-breaking news out of a traditionally closed world, the Vatican. We've been fortunate to be able to read frequent updates from Religion News Service Vatican correspondent Alessandro Speciale, working as he has been, immersed in the historic news of a papal resignation sweeping across Rome. We're very fortunate indeed that he has agreed to step away for just a few minutes to talk with us today on State of Belief Radio. Alessandro, welcome back to this show.
Hello again.
How was this news of the Pope's resignation received there where you are in Rome? Was it as much of a shock there as it was in the United States, or did you have some warning?
Well, no, everybody was taken by surprise by this announcement. I mean, even if the Pope himself had said he would consider resigning if he felt physically or psychologically incapable of carrying on with his duties, no one saw it coming, because even if he's 85 and he was looking more tired and more afraid in recent months, there had been no breakdown in health, nothing that led to the suspicion that he was actually about to resign at this moment in time.
The official explanation for the resignation is the Pope's deteriorating health. You have just said you could see some deterioration in his health, but is that what is recognized as the real reason for the resignation?
Well, no, the official reason is that he didn't feel he had enough strength to carry on with the job, which means that in a sense, he is also telling the cardinals and the world that being a pope is not just about, or is not anymore just about praying and studying and living a holy life, but being a pope is nowadays a very public role. It involves traveling, it involves meeting with people, with millions of views when there is Word of the Day. It means being at the center of the world stage. So he is basically telling the Pope, it's not that because there has been any breakdown with my health, it's that because the requirements of the job of being Pope have changed, and an 85-year-old person is not the right person for the job anymore.
Alessandro, do you have a sense of the mood inside the Vatican since the announcement? Is it a sense of panic or sadness or optimism?
From the Monsignori I talked to, the first reaction and the sense that is still very much there, because people are still coming to grips with what is happening, has been one of shock, of utter surprise. Some have felt maybe not let down, but definitely felt sadness. Many Monsignors, many cardinals said it openly. And at the time, there has also been, as being as the Catholic Church, an attempt to try to grasp the spiritual meaning of this and trying to see what it means spiritually, and so looking forward to what comes next. Yeah. But definitely, many people were surprised and maybe not personally hurt, but received this with a sense of sadness because they didn't expect it.
Alessandro, I'm curious, when a decision like this is being made by the Pope, and I have no idea how that's done, but does he consult with other people within the Vatican, or does this decision come strictly from him and private reflection?
Well, this is an interesting question. Church law has a provision for the Pope resigning, even if no one had in the last 600 years actually used it. And he clearly consulted it because in the announcement, he repeated word for word the formula in church law, so to make sure that it was legally okay, legally valid. At the same time, it seems that he consulted very little, and that this news that he wanted to resign was known just by the very, very few people who were closest to him. And even senior cardinals like Cardinal Bertone, Cardinal Sodano were told just in the few days preceding the announcement.
I see. Well, now, a question that has been raised to me, and I suppose this is a theological question. If you take seriously the infallibility of the Pope, how does an infallible Pope decide to resign?
Well, the answer so far, even if the Vatican is figuring many aspects of having a Pope and a retired Pope inside the Vatican, the aspect of infallibility is probably one of the few things that in the Vatican people are not excessively worried about. The infallibility, as it is meant by the Catholic Church, is one of the prerogatives of being Pope. So once he resigns, he loses it. And even when someone is Pope, infallibility has a very narrow meaning. It basically means that when the Pope makes some decision that have a doctrinal impact from the Church, so not everything he does nor everything he says, but just on very few specific topics, the Church believes that the Holy Spirit will assist the Pope in a special way so that he can make no wrong, or at least he can't go excessively wrong. He will basically steer his hand away from very big mistakes. So infallibility has a very narrow meaning, and it's so to say the Pope will lose it when he resigns.
That's a very helpful answer for people standing outside that tradition. I know the Pope is the leader of the Church, but he also serves as the head of state for Vatican City. What kind of reaction to his resignation have you seen on the streets?
Well, in Rome, because there are no real Vatican citizens. I mean, the Vatican citizens are mostly cardinal or a handful of Vatican employees. In the streets, the surprise has been big. Actually, it has been quite some shock for Romans. One of the most common questions was, can the Pope actually resign? Because this is so unprecedented, people didn't even think it was possible.
What do you think Pope Benedict XVI will most be remembered for?
Well, probably this decision of his to resign will be one of the key acts that will be remembered of his pontificate, because it's still difficult to gauge how much of an impact it will have on the papacy. But probably it will be a strong and lasting impact, because just think this: when the cardinals meet next month in Rome to elect a Pope successor, they might be more open to consider a younger candidate, someone who is 60 or maybe not even 60 or in his early 60s, so that with today's health it's foreseeable that he's going to have 20 years of healthy life ahead of him, in the knowledge that he might and potentially will resign if he feels he's not up to the job, or if he feels there is the need for change, for fresh energy, for fresh ideas in the papacy. And this is something completely unprecedented, because until now, the cardinals had to choose someone that would stay with them for life. And so this was one of the reasons why Benedict was chosen, because he was already almost 80 when he was elected Pope.
Alessandro, I notice in news coverage that some people stay just at the level of the integrity of the resignation, and then there are some who always sound a little suspicious, like he didn't want to face the challenges that the Church must face right now with the continuing scandal related to the priesthood, the debate over contraception that continues, and the really massive challenges that the Church faces. Is it your sense that all of that played into him saying, I don't have the strength to do this?
Well, I don't think he resigned per se because of these challenges, because these challenges have always been there. And when he spoke about the possibility of resigning, he also stressed that he wouldn't think that the Pope should resign under pressure if he felt there was any ongoing crisis. In fact, he saw through the so-called Vatileaks affair, the butler stealing his confidential papers, and he waited for this affair to be over before resigning. I think it's more, and actually a Vatican connecting newspaper today gave weight to this hypothesis, that he felt that there was the need to address these challenges of a different energy, of a different approach, that he wouldn't be the right person because he was weak and growing weak and older, and so he possibly wanted to leave the challenge to someone else who might be more capable, might have more of the strength to do it.
I understand. Would, again, for those of us who don't understand as you do what's going on, tell us what is happening now inside the Vatican and what happens next to the throne of St. Peter?
Well, it's kind of weird because until February 28th, when the Pope's resignation actually kicks in and becomes effective, the Vatican tries to portray these last 2 weeks as business as usual. The Pope goes on with his appointments, he receives bishops, he received the President of Romania, and there have been some minor appointments in the Curia or as bishops. So they try to portray it as business as usual. Of course, in the meantime, the Vatican is trying to understand what actually the Pope's role will be once he has resigned. Then, on February 28, when he resigns, the Vatican will go into so-called sede vacante mode, which means in Latin that there is no one sitting on the throne of Peter, as they say. And this means that a group of cardinals will start meeting regularly and manage the daily affairs of the church, and call for a conclave, which is all the cardinals who are under 80 from all over the world. There are 117 of them, will come to Rome, and it's supposed to be between February 15 and March 15 to March 20, but that could change. They will gather secretly and with no one watching in the Sistine Chapel under the famous Last Judgment fresco by Michelangelo, and there they will secretly vote for who is going to be the next pope.
Do you have any idea, is the Pope going to stay in the Vatican, or is he going to go home?
Apparently, he's going to stay in the Vatican. He's at a small convent inside the Vatican walls where there was a handful of nuns who left last autumn, and it's been renovated to prepare it to be the retirement home of the retired Pope.
I see. Well, I'm going to ask you a question I bet you've been asked 100 times by now. Do you have any sense where the next Pope is likely to come from?
That's a very difficult question. People say that the Church is right for a non-European Pope, someone coming maybe from Latin America where the most Catholics live, or from Africa where the Catholic Church is actually growing as opposed to Europe and North America. But that's very difficult to say because most of the cardinals that will elect the Pope are European. 1 in 4 of them is in fact Italian. So it's going to be really difficult for someone outside of Europe to be appointed. And this is a very difficult conclave, I guess, to predict. There is no clear frontrunner.
Is there, from what you know about what happens in a conclave, is there very frank debate that talks about how someone can handle the various challenges that you and I have mentioned?
Well, when the cardinals meet in the Sistine Chapel, it's actually just for voting. The talking, the trying to understand, and the consultation between each other actually happen before the voting or outside the voting, that the cardinals live sheltered and shielded from the outside world in a complex inside the Vatican called Santa Marta, which is a bit like a luxury hotel. That's where they stay, and they are secluded in there for the days of the conclave. So I guess over meals and in this kind of social moments, there is actually going to be discussion. But there is no open campaigning, there is no speeches and programs and open bid for the job.
Well, it's a very dramatic and intriguing process. Alessandro, you're in Vatican City. When you look at global news coverage of this event, is there anything that you see missing or not understood? Is something in particular that you think needs to be explained to Catholics and others who are following this story that they may not be hearing about?
Well, I think the what is missing in coverage is probably what is missing most times from coverage of the Catholic Church, and actually of every coverage of very complex historical institutions that have a long tradition, which requires some kind of effort from the journalists and from the audience to understand. I know that the rites and the ways of the Catholic Church can look, and in fact are, Byzantine and illogical by modern standards, and probably sometimes often just don't make much sense. At the same time, to understand them, you have to try to put yourself in their own place. And this is a place where for 2,000 years, history has been made, things have been done on a long, uninterrupted sequence. And so tradition and the old ways are very cherished because they are considered as key part of the Vatican and of the Catholic identity.
This is a very busy time for Alessandro Speciale, who is the Vatican correspondent for Religion News Service. We reached him in Rome, where he's been doing an outstanding job of covering the fast-breaking story of Pope Benedict XVI's resignation, effective February 28th. You can follow his coverage at religionnews.com. He has been insightful and helpful to us. Alessandro, for being with us today on State of Belief, grazie mille.
Grazie a voi. Thank you.